Hey, Andrew, guess what?
What's that, Sam?
Math equation for you. Sveshnikov plus an empty net. How many goals do you get?
Let's check the math here. That would be zero.
Andrew, I don't know what it is this season when it comes to Svetch. It's like he gets an opportunity for an empty net to pad his stats, and he doesn't do it. I don't understand.
Yeah, and for his whole career, he's been kind of odd automatic with those empty netters, but I guess everything else is just going too good for him this season. He's got to pay it back somehow.
Apparently, I'm telling you, if you add up the chances that he actually could have gotten with those empty net goals, we could be talking about 30 goals this season for Svetch. I'm not saying that he won't get there with the remaining games, but I think it'd be a little bit more concrete to say he gets 30 goals.
Oh yeah, you factor in all the empty net chances he's had. You factor in he definitely has his fair share of the now over 100 posts and crossbars hit on the season. Fun stat from the broadcast tonight. But yeah, again, it's something that in different years might have been a bigger deal, but Svech has just been so awesome the rest of the way that just be happy that Jankowski got some stats going for him.
Yes, definitely. I'll always love Jankowski. Well, a few things just want to cover, like the usual. Obviously, if you've been listening to us for quite some time, remember we have a great partnership with SeatGeek. You get $20 off your first purchase if you use promo code Caniac Reports, all one word. It's a great deal if you're trying to save money on some tickets, whether that's to a comedy show, live concert, or even to a Hurricanes game. And also remember, please, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you never miss another episode. And also, if you're listening to us wherever you get your podcasts, please leave a rating and a review. Really does help us out. And also, wanted to say thank you, Andrew, to my co hosts for doing your first ever solo episode for the last episode because for those of you who don't know, I was taking a trip to Nashville and I really, really enjoyed it. I like hockey, so I was at a Predators game and also love country music. And Nashville seemed to be a pretty good place for both of those.
Yeah, it seems like it's one of the more entertaining places to watch a game. So happy you got to check that out. Other than the hockey, what was your favorite part of Nashville?
My favorite part was probably so there's this tour called RCA Studio B. I think I kind of talked to you about this before we started to record, but we got to visit the studio that was very, very popular back in the 50s and 60s. Songs like Jolene, I'll Always Love You songs came out of from Dolly Parton. Elvis recorded, and I got a picture at the piano that Elvis warmed up to. So I found that to be pretty cool. It was very, very fun. And also the hot chicken over there and the live music, great. Really loved the experience.
Awesome. Well, man, I am glad you had a good time. I hope everyone enjoyed my first solo episode. I'll keep getting better at it. But Sam, it is good to have you back, man.
Yeah, no problems. Always glad to be back. Back in the saddle again. All righty. Just a little bit of a country nod there. Okay, so NHL news, stuff around the league. One thing I do want to talk about, Andrew, is the Colorado Avalanche. They are the first team to officially clinch the playoffs. No surprise at all here, Andrew, but it just shows how good of a team this is. And I mean, yeah, they're really, really good, but they're also in a division, Andrew, that's very tough because you have Dallas and Minnesota, mostly Dallas is like right behind you for that first place spot.
Yeah, but first of all, congrats to Colorado on clinching the playoff berth. Feel like we've known that was coming
Mm-hmm.
before opening night. But that being said, man, for how fast of a start they had to the season, the fact that Dallas is right on their tail, that's going to be an interesting race to the end because not having to play the Wild in the first round is is maybe the biggest prize up for grab in the West right now, because that's a tough third place division team.
Yes, and I know you talked about the standings in the last episode, Andrew, but just to give a little bit of a nod, Colorado has 102 points, Dallas is 97, so they really are battling it out for that first place team because they do not want to first Minnesota in the first round, and I don't blame them, Andrew.
No, having to go against Quinn Hughes, Kaprizov, and
Faber.
if Wallstead gets hot, or really they have two great goalies there. So Minnesota, that's such a tough division, and I think that division needs to be the case in point for why we bring back the 1-8 playoff format.
Yep. It took me some time, Andrew, to be like, do I want the 1-8 playoff format or do I want the current playoff format? But yeah, I do want the 1-8, and we'll talk about that later with the general managers meeting. But the next thing I do want to talk about, Andrew, is a player that has played very, very good, particularly for Nashville. But Ryan Johansson, he has announced that he is retiring from hockey. And Andrew, this is a player that is known to be very, very good. His main two teams were Columbus in his early years and then Nashville. Very, very good player.
Yeah, kind of maybe not even fully appreciated during his career, because whether it was Columbus or outside of a few years with Nashville, was kind of a really good player on maybe some not so great teams. But still, man, heck of a career. And yeah, I wish him the best of luck in the next chapter. But that's definitely going to be a hole that Nashville's going to have to fill, both on the ice and in the locker room.
Yes, definitely. Who knows? Maybe Johansson goes into like coaching or scouting or something to where he can be part of an NHL team. But yeah, whatever his next chapter is, I hope he enjoys his retirement. And that's kind of pretty much it. And any more thoughts on Ryan Johansson?
Yeah, maybe he'll go into coaching. I've never known a team to take an old center and have success with them as their head coach. So maybe Nashville could be the first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, Carolina took an old center and made him head coach with Brindamore. So it's worked out so far.
Well, depending on who you ask on a Twitter, maybe not.
Oh my gosh, I can't scan Kane's Twitter sometimes. Like the guys led us to like what, almost a decade of consecutive playoff runs. Like, good gosh, that's to me success on its own, regardless if you get a Stanley Cup or not.
For sure. And I mean, I think when you look back on Rod's tenure, I think maybe with the exception of the Getzel year, I think at least on paper, like none of those were the best team in the league. Now, hockey is kind of interesting in that I don't think the best team always wins the cup, just because like so much has to go into making it through that just meat grinder of a tournament. You need a little bit of luck, both in terms of help and bounces. But yeah, I think Rod has put these players in a chance to be very successful. It's just a matter of them capitalizing.
Oh, definitely agree. The next thing we'll talk about, Andrew kind of already discussed a little bit of this in the last episode with the general managers meetings, but I want to give my thoughts because they did talk about a few things. Seems like conflicting reports on Eric Tulsky, Andrew, in terms of like, obviously he did bring up the concern of head injuries, which I can get, especially with Carolina being a bit of a smallish type of team when you compare them to other teams. It's just how it was delivered is we have conflicting sources. Some say that it was very harsh and brash. Some said it was just brought up casually. So, Andrew, I don't know what's going on, but I can see why Tulsky probably wanted to bring that up with the way the team is. And it seems like Tom Dundon was the one that really wanted him to bring it up.
Yeah, that seems to be the one kind of consistent thing I'm seeing in all these reports, which all kind of, like you mentioned, kind of vary on what Bettman's reaction was to Tulsky. But everyone seems to agree that he said something to the effect of like, oh, well, I guess Dundon's the owner who said something. But I like that Tulsky is mentioning this because I don't think that he's wrong. I think that the NHL has taken a step back, not even with headshots, just on a few of the penalties they've been trying to take out of the game. Like, what was it? Stahl in the Pittsburgh game, who got very obviously cross-checked, like right below the numbers into the boards, and they were
Yep.
talking about how they're trying to get that out of the game too. They, the NHL puts too much protection on their officials, and that's not to say that they don't do a good job. I think they're the best in the world, and this is such a insanely difficult game to officiate. But if the Department of Player Safety is not going to do supplementary discipline to actually take things out, then I think Tulsky is absolutely right to bring it up. And if anything, I'm a little disappointed in the other GMs, kind of the good old boys of hockey, not really making as big of a stink about it as they probably should have.
Oh yeah, I agree, and it makes me wonder too, Andrew. Like with him bringing that up, like I don't think it's the best example of headshots, but it makes you wonder if they were thinking of that Stankoven hit that Wilson delivered on
Mm.
Stankoven. You know, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not Hurricanes related, I think Dundon and Tulsky, Dundon being the money guy, Tulsky being kind of the number guy, they really put a premium on these athletes and them staying healthy, which, obviously like the coaches and all them do too. But I think Rod or another coach like him maybe has the mentality of, the bumps and bruises are kind of part of the game, which you need to have a balance of that too. You need your coach to kind of have that power through stuff. But from a ownership GM standpoint, these are your assets. You have to protect them. And there's so many things that can go wrong accidentally in hockey, that like cheap shots, whether it's to the head, to the knee, it's all fallout from the Gudis hit and things like that. I feel like we're having one of these like kind of weeks and a half where this is a talking point every season, and then come playoffs it kind of goes away, because we know that that's just an entirely different sport once the playoffs start in terms of the intensity. But hats off to Tulsky, and in a roundabout way, hats off to Dundon, because I like that this ownership group isn't afraid to ruffle feathers of the rest of the league, whether it's this or something as silly as allowing the storm surge to be what it was back in the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. But other things that they talked about, obviously, at the GM meeting, Andrew, was the playoff format. And yeah, I am an advocate of the 1 through 8, but I mean, Gary Bettman, I mean, when the GM meetings ended, Andrew, he kind of brought up all the typical stuff like nothing's really going to change. It just isn't. And I don't expect anything less from Gary Bettman. He says obviously that they have the best officials in the world. There's no flaws, and um, obviously the 1 through 8 playoff format, and I think they also discussed, I believe, goalie interference too, Andrew. So goalie interference, I honestly think, Andrew, in order to remedy that, I think the rule has to be a lot more simpler. You can't have all these caveats, because I am a guy that likes to take out ambiguity entirely. So when you throw in these what ifs or these, well, it's goalie interference only if this happens, I think that needs to be wiped out. That's just me, though.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. I like that there is a little bit of discretion with the officials, only because I don't want to go fully back to having it be where a playoff deciding goal is controversial because someone had their skate in the crease, like in the Buffalo Dallas Cup Finals way back. But for it to be at just such a ambiguous point where you're almost kind of having to say things like, well, how hard was he pushed? Can you tell? Like, did he have time to stop? Things that there's no real solid like proof to say either way, but it comes up on every single one of these challenges. So how they find a healthy middle ground, I'm not exactly sure, but the way it is now, it's too vague. And even though we like to pick on Tracy for always being wrong, a guy who's been watching the game that long, especially a former, accomplished goalie in his own right, shouldn't be getting it wrong that often.
Definitely. And I mean, with it being so controversial too, Andrew, I would, again, I am a little bit knocking on the officials here, but I would think if it's so controversial, all goalie interferences whether you agree with it or not, I think should go up to Toronto because they have the equipment, I think, to better make the calls than the refs do with the freaking iPads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just take it out of their hands completely. There's
Yes.
hockey is so hockey. I think is the only sport that's on par with baseball in terms of just there's such a unwillingness to even consider that things could be done better. There's
Mhm.
such a, even things like say like the visors that, were made common sense why you would want to protect a player's eyes. They had to start it at like the youth level. So in like 10 years when those players were coming up, it would be natural. Like they're so afraid to disrupt just kind of how guys go through their day-to-day motion. But I think it's that stubbornness that is why just the leadership of the sport is kind of being called into question the way that it is.
Yeah. And I think there should be questions. At least invite the questions, and if you know if you disagree, at least you had the conversation. You know,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
to me the biggest thing.
yeah, and for what it's worth, the league has absolutely exploded under Batman's watch. If you're a Southern hockey fan, you almost have to kind of take a little bit of the spice of your takes off of him because that's the joke in Canada is that Gary Bettman wants hockey to be like a Southern sport. So who knows? Maybe if the NHL isn't run by him, maybe Hartford doesn't get the green light to move down to Raleigh. Who knows? But he's been the commissioner for I think 33 years now. Peros has been the head of player safety for like 9 years. I think the league just needs some fresh eyes. It doesn't mean that anybody needs to walk out of here with their head down in shame. But I think it's just time that the league gets a fresh set of eyes on it.
I would not mind that at all. But that's it for us talking about the general manager meetings. Let's get to. I mean, we already talked about the Hurricanes with Tulski already, Andrew. But a few things that I do want to talk about in regards to the Hurricanes. One of them, Taylor Hall made comments on playing for Canadian teams like Winnipeg, like Edmonton, like Toronto, and he has played with one of them in terms of Edmonton in his career. And he's basically said, which I think all of us kind of knew in some sort of way, and the fact that the pressure on Canadian teams when you're playing on those teams, it is a lot higher than
Mhm.
it is playing on a team like Carolina or any of the Florida teams or Nashville. And I mean, I think again, we all knew this, Andrew, and with Taylor Hall saying that, it even almost pretty much verifies our thoughts on it. One thing I will say though, Andrew, I feel like when it comes to the Canadian teams, it seems like you have all the Canadian teams you're playing on. There's pressure, and I feel like there's one extra pressure when you're playing for Toronto
Mhm.
because it's just so idolized up there when it comes to Toronto and hockey. I won't say idolized maybe is the right word for it, but hockey's very devoted, I should say. That's probably a better word for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you can look at the Mitch Marner saga, and that's a great example of that. And that was a hometown kid who had, all the talent in the world
Oh
for
yeah.
a variety of reasons, both his own and the team didn't get it done. And at times, it got to not get too far into it, it got to be pretty toxic. And I think, granted, Mitch didn't do himself any favors by at least according to reports I read, just surrounding himself with friends who liked to show him, tweets that were critiquing him, all that kind of stuff, messing with that poor guy's head, which if you have people like that in your life, get them out. Mitch Marner is a great example of this. But
Hmm.
I think Toronto, and then to a slightly lesser extent, Vancouver and Montreal. It's such a big deal. It's the
It
only
is.
real major ticket in town, with all due respect to the Raptors in Toronto, who I guess at this point might be at least kind of close to the Leafs, but like Montreal and Vancouver, that's all they got going on at that level anyway. Like junior hockey is so big up there, and we all love hockey. We're obsessed with
No,
this,
we do.
but I don't think a Canes fan can be offended at somebody saying that though it's growing in terms of its mainstream appeal in the Triangle area, or just the Carolinas in general. As far as like diehards, it's still very niche. Whereas up
It
there,
is.
there's just so much more people who like grew up playing the sport, like know the history of the game.
Hmm.
before, the 0-1 Cup Finals, which is where I think a lot of us Canes fans, like that's where our history of hockey kind of starts, and then we're trying to fill in the blanks back there. Whereas in Canada, they know it the way we grew up being told about, well, the Packers in 1945 won the, like there's just that kind of whole thing up there with hockey.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But it's interesting that Taylor Hall said that. Again, I don't think it's a huge surprise to anybody. But again, it just verifies even more of just that pressure of playing with different teams and different cultures. So the next thing I want to talk about, Andrew, is Alexander Nikishin. Obviously, in the game in Toronto that we will recap, he scored his 10th goal. And interesting record for you guys listening and watching is Nikishin and Schaefer from the Islanders marked the first time since 2015 season where two rookie defensemen got 10 goals. So I think that's a very interesting stat. But with Nikishin getting 10 goals as a rookie defenseman, Andrew, that is excellent. And he's definitely, I think, a player that has really improved as the season has progressed.
Oh, 100%. I think offensively, he's always had the raw talent. The slap shot alone is going to get you some goals, but we've been watching the rest of his game round out. And in particular, I think just you can tell he's playing with more confidence. There's not that little split second of hesitation before he makes a move or decides to shoot the puck. Now, the biggest thing he needs to improve on is what he does in front of his own net. I still think he's at times a little soft getting guys out, but I expect that to come with time. Luckily, this team is, really has 4 really great defensemen ahead of him that they can, kind of shelter him a little bit and then just let him absolutely go off in the offensive zone. But kind of like what I was saying a few games ago, where I made the comments about him not getting back after a pinch. I think those are things that this time next year, when he just gets just more experience, because there really is no substitute for that. I think he has all the tools to be a really well-rounded player. Now, the Schaefer comparison, I like it because I think he deserves to be in the conversation for best rookie defenseman, but I don't know, man. That Schaefer kid, that guy's looking like a generational talent, man.
Oh, he is. He is so fun to watch because to me, again, I tried to make a Canes comparison just to make it easier for you guys watching, you guys listening. To me, it's kind of like Ehlers, but playing on defense because he is so naturally gifted at skating. And when you can skate, like seriously, all of us, like we watched the Pittsburgh game. Like Ehlers can skate. He's probably, I think we can all agree, Ehlers is the best skater on this team. But when you put him like on the blue line, that's to me Matthew Schaefer because he's that good.
Yeah, I actually really like that comparison. The speed, and then also like with Ehlers, or maybe even more, the guy who Ehlers was brought in to essentially replace a Marty Necas. It's his puck handling ability while going full speed, not having to slow down at all, and Schaefer with a few more years of experience. I think the Islanders for a long time, their brand of hockey has been kind of boring. I think Schaefer might be the start of something very different.
Yeah, and I think it kind of needs to be a little bit different just because I do think just in today's NHL, Andrew, like, I mean, I don't want to neglect defense, and you have to have defense to win a cup. I almost stand by that. I mean, goals, they are hard to come by. So you're going to need those very naturally skilled players, and Schaefer's one of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's been the story of the Canes matchup ups against them. With Carolina, also a very, defense-first team. But it feels like with Carolina, they play defense with the intention of sending it back the other way. There's a process that leads to offense, whereas the Islanders, it was always more kind of old school, get possession back, set it up, and then attack. Whereas Carolina, I think, has been able to find that blend of old school shut down defensive responsibility hockey paired with allowing guys like your Ahos, your Jarvises, your Ehlers to get their breakout chances due to your defensemen being so active with their stick and so aggressive with how they push it out.
Yep, definitely. But yeah, Nikishin, he's definitely improved a lot. I'm not saying he's on Matthew Schaefer's type of level. I think, to be honest, like with Nikishin and Schaefer's comparison, Andrew, it's more like one player has how can I say this? Nikishin's style of play is completely different to Schaefer in the fact that Nikishin he doesn't have that skating ability as Schaefer does, but his potential, his highest ceiling, I think like we see it. It's just a different style of play, but it's very, very good, from what I'm
Mhm.
saying there.
Yeah, I don't throw these names around loosely. I'm not saying either of these players are there, but play style. I feel like
There's more
Schaefer,
Scott Stevens in
yeah,
type of
Schaefer is more Bobby Orr.
mhm.
Nikishin's more Chris Pronger, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. Mhm.
A much nicer, hasn't ruined anybody's knees yet. Chris Pronger, who
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
I did love Pronger as a kid growing up. Something about a hard clapper from the blue line just gets me excited.
Oh yeah, definitely. But that's kind of like what we're saying. Like, not every great defenseman is that Kale McCarr, Bobby Orr type of defenseman. You have the big physical defensemen that are also very good offensively as well. And that's what Nikishin, I think, will be at one point.
Yep, it's just a matter of him just kind of just learning the game at this speed a little bit more, and then the next step is to see if he can bring the physicality a little bit more consistently in the playoffs. It's all there. He's just got to get a little bit more consistent with it.
Yes, he does. And also, another thing too, Hurricanes, Andrew, their magic number to officially clinch, we know they are 14 points. Or actually, after tonight or today's game, because it is a day game, 12 points now. So getting closer to officially clinching. Andrew, I think with this win against Pittsburgh, they ain't going to catch us for number one in the division. They just aren't.
No, I think that's all but been one. Crazier things have happened. Knock on wood for help and all that kind of stuff. But Rods is going to be faced with a tough choice here. And I think this choice is going to come in the next few games because there are a few guys, Jacob Slavin, I think being the biggest one, guys who we've seen maybe, not poor play, but, guys who we know have had some injuries, guys who, in like with Slavin's case, definitely came back from the Olympics, pretty fatigued, which,
Mhm.
with that, tournament and that performance, how could you not? Rod's going to have to decide how important that number one seed in the East is to him because I think giving guys like, say, Slavin, Martin Okun at times has looked a little gassed here lately, just giving them a couple of games here and there. And then getting guys like, say, maybe if they bring up Nystrom or getting Kokoniemi some games in just to kind of get their conditioning back up to game speed because they're all
Mhm.
practicing, but there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
substitute.
Yeah, there's no substitute for a natural game. So,
No.
yeah, I could definitely see it to where there might be some minor rotations with the remainder games we have. But if you're still chasing probably for the number one position in the Eastern Conference, I mean, probably shouldn't be scratching a guy like Aho. Again, I realize playoffs are the most important thing, but you also want to have the biggest home ice advantages you can get. So I don't
For
know if
sure.
scratching a guy like Aho or Jarvis is probably the best choice.
Yeah, no. And from what I know, again, knocking on wood here, like
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
for all we know, they're healthy. They seem to be playing great. That top line, even though it hasn't been bearing chances quite as much as we would like to see. Granted, they were awesome tonight against
They were.
Pittsburgh. You know, they all seem like they're doing fine. I think they're generating chances. They look like they're skating fast. It's more the guys who Slavin's the biggest one for me, where I just think again, I wouldn't say he's been bad, but he hasn't been Jacob Slavin. And I
No,
think a lot of
he
it,
really hasn't.
yeah, I think a
Um,
lot of it has to do with just how his ability to close out on guys, which we know he had the lower body issue, and I know it's not his hockey IQ, and it's definitely not his stick checking ability. He might be the best just using your stick by itself to defenseman in the entire game. So we've seen them win without him in the regular season. So if they get to a point where maybe they feel like we can afford to have a Jacob Slavin play be the difference between winning and losing, give a point or two up, I think they may be wise to do that, because without Slavin being at least at 90% for the playoffs, I don't think they have any chance to do anything past maybe getting to the second round.
Yeah, I would agree. Andrew, let's go ahead and get to a sponsor, and then we'll be recapping the 2 games. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers, bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Blue Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026. NHL. All rights reserved. All right, Andrew. So this is going to be very quick, but right before the 2 games, I do want to talk about my experience at the Predators game, just because it was very, very cool. I will admit, when I entered in a Bridgestone Arena, I kind of did have a little bit of high expectations, Andrew, just because like I'm in Nashville, and what's interesting, like Country Music Hall of Fame, Bridgestone Arena, Music City Hall, are all right there close to each other. And with that being said, and also there's Broadway too, just like probably maybe right around the corner. I did have kind of high expectations. So when I came into the arena, um, like obviously us Canes fans probably mostly know Lenovo Arena, so I'm trying to do kind of a comparison to this. But the walkway is a lot more spacious at Bridgestone Arena than it is at Lenovo. Like it's probably quadruple the size, like because there's so much space to where you could walk around at Andrew. And to me, I would say that's the thing that stunned me the most, to be honest, with just how big the open space was of trying to get to your seats and all. It was just so big. They even had a very nice car in there on display, and uh, it was just awesome. I believe it was Military Appreciation Night, Andrew, just because there was a lot of um, military stuff that they were doing during the game. I know for the national anthem, like I mean, Nashville, it's born bred country music, as you know, but they had, I believe, Trace Adkins doing the Star Spangled Banner. I was like, that's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. Trace Atkins, a very impressive career, but he's no Adam Lee Decker. I'll tell you that much.
No, he's not. Well, he's no Adam Lee Decker in terms of, well, in terms of the voice, he's not. Because Trace Atkins, boy, can he hit low notes. Very, very low notes. But I mean, when it comes to career, though, I mean, Trace Atkins has a lot better of a career. Listen, I love Adam Lee Decker. I really, really do. It's just when you bring on country professionals, like it's like, oh my gosh, you know.
Hey, Adam Lee Decker has had a residency for over 10 years. There's world famous bands that can't even say that.
That's true. I'll give you props to that, but it was very cool. Carolina, sorry, not Carolina. Nashville won 4-1 over Vegas. I honestly thought Vegas was the better team. It's just the Nashville goaltender, and I think Union was doing very, very good, and Stamkos almost got himself a hat trick. So found the overall experience be very, very cool. I do think when it came to like being in the arena with all the seats and all, I think Lenovo kind of has Bridgestone beat with the seating capacity. So that's one thing I kind of found a little bit interesting. So, but I mean, again, seeing Bridgestone and being in Lenovo also is one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, I could see them wanting to upgrade Lenovo a bit. I
Hmm.
could.
Yeah, no, it's been due for some updating for a long time, and I get it. Like change is never easy, and like there's always been that charm of just the tailgating, the parking lot, the very like kind of just high end college stadium vibe that it
Mhm.
had for the
Oh yeah.
longest period of time. But you do go to like I've been to games recently like TD, MSG, which obviously, those are just like bigger cities in general. So there's just more things going into those places, beyond the hockey and the basketball type stuff. But I'm really excited to see what that area looks like once all the renovations are done. I'm excited to see if they wind up getting that secondary music venue in there. I think that you know Canes games and that whole area might go to being a 1 day event to you're doing an Airbnb in that same parking lot and just having a weekend there. So, um, but yeah, definitely due for some upgrades. And if you go to other arenas, almost all of them make that pretty apparent.
Yeah, they really really do. Well, let's go ahead and get to recapping the games. Andrew, the Toronto game. So, I mainly saw like a brief recap of this game because again, it's after my time in Nashville. But obviously, Carolina they win the game in overtime, 4-3. And please help me on this, Andrew. But it seemed like Carolina was the better team, even though
Mhm.
Toronto kept coming back and tying it.
Yeah, it felt like a game that never should have been as close as it was. I think all three of the goals, to varying degrees of bad, were goals that Busty would want back. The second one in particular just absolutely cannot go. But you do
Yeah,
like seeing
yeah.
that Busty was able to build a third period out of it. So even though I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and say like it was what you wanted to see, I do think Busty is starting to build something. But the mistakes he did make were glaringly bad.
Yeah, I again I saw at least the goals, but yeah,
Mhm.
that Tavares goal that can't go. The first goal, Joshua. I mean, that was the first and only goal in the first period. I mean, I do think the second goal was worse, but that goal, like that was such a juicy rebound he
Mhm.
gave up, and it wasn't that big of a shot either. So, eh,
Yeah,
don't
felt like
like that goal out either.
no, that one felt like a rebound. He definitely could have directed differently. But, still though, you give, on a goal like that, you do have to give at least some credit to Joshua for attacking the net. Maybe even put a little bit of onus on the defense for letting him, crash the net like that. But I think the shot that set up the rebound, you're right. It wasn't like an absolute, snipe of a wrister that Bussy was lucky to get a piece of, and therefore, just be happy it didn't go in. Like that's something that I think any goalie on his game is able to direct to one of the back corners, not just directly back out into the slot.
Yeah, and then the third goal, which is the Nylander goal. What'd you think of that one specifically?
Still not as bad as the second goal. I think the defense got kind of torched by a Nylander. For all the critiques he's faced in recent days because of the Matthews incident. Still just an absolutely elite offensive creative talent, and I think that's what happened. I think he was able to create some separation. He was able to use his puck handling to get into the paint, and then was just able to find a hole between Bussy's legs and score a goal that way. So one that you would like to see Bussy get, but I can at least watch the chaoticness of that goal and see how it happened. That was, Tavares coming around, him having only the option to pass or send a just meatball on the ice towards Bussy, where all he has to do is keep his stick flat, and then that's not going in.
Mm.
Um, so again, all three goals you would like to have him back, but if I had to rank them, two was the worst. I think maybe the first one was the second worst, and the third one I can at least give the break of it was chaotic and it's William Nylander.
Yeah, I mean, so again, looking at those goals and the games before Toronto, this is going to be separate from the Pittsburgh game. But it's like I realized that both Anderson and Bussy. I mean, well, I think you and I agree Anderson's the better of the two. It's not like Anderson is playing off of the roof on fire good. It's just we know that he's playing better.
Mhm.
And with that being said, like I agree these are bad goals, but I feel like again, separate this from the Pittsburgh game. I feel like these are bad goals along with the help of somewhat bad defense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's been exceptions to this, but in terms of just the consistency from this defensive core in general, maybe the worst season we've seen in the Brendan Moore era in terms of just like the amount of grade A chances that they're giving up, like right in front of their net.
Yes.
And that I think that hasn't done Anderson or Bussy any favors, at least when you look at on paper their performance. We were talking about this a few episodes ago that, a goalie who gets 3 saves against 40 shots, but they were all right in the chest shots versus a goalie who faces 12 shots, but they're all grade A's. I'd rather be the goalie facing 40. And I think that they're putting both of these guys in that predicament where they're kind of getting lulled to sleep a bit by how dominant sometimes the forechecking and the neutralized play of this team can be. And then there's just these lapses in the defensive end that puts high-end players just with time and space right in front of these guys. And, like in this Pittsburgh game or in the Pittsburgh game, the last
It was
one.
the best defense I've seen
Yeah.
in playing a long time.
Right. I got my Pittsburgh games mixed up. I love it when we play the same team within a week. But that goal that Crosby scored where Raquel was able to put it out in front to him and Crosby just has all day to make a move. I don't care who's in net. If you give guys like this that much time and space in that situation, they're probably gonna score.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And like another thing too, that I mean, we already talked about them a little bit, but to me, I would say if I were to rank the defensive pairs right now, the Miller and Walker pair has been our best pair. I think Riley's been good, but I mean, again, this is no shade on Riley, but you also have like again when you're have these defensive pairs, I mean, you also have to factor in both players. So while I think Riley's been good and decent, you also have a guy in Nikishin who's still learning the game. He's still a rookie. He's making mistakes. Now, from what I heard, he actually played pretty good in the Toronto game. But it's just overall, like lately, again, I'm separating the great 5-1 win against Pittsburgh out of this. It just seems that pair of Walker and Miller have been better, and Slavin and Sheffield recently have kind of been the pair that's out there where the other team scores. And I do think Slavin probably isn't 100% healthy, and there's probably not anything you can do with defensive pairs right now. But I would say, like, once Ghost comes back, would you put Ghost with Slavin? Because we've had that offensive defenseman being played with Slavin before with Dougie Hamilton, Tony D'Angelo. Like, what? I mean, I don't see why it would hurt this team of putting Ghost with Slavin.
Under normal circumstances, I would agree with you 110 and 10%. I think when we did our preseason preview, I think we both kind of guessed that would be the top pair. I think kind of shocking to all of us that Ghost has stepped up defensively as much as he has, that he and Nikishin have actually been a very productive line.
They have.
But just because it seems like Slavin is battling a lower body injury and it's cutting down his speed, which cuts down his ability to recover, which is why you were putting him with your D'Angelos, your Dougie, so that they could have the free range to be more aggressive and maybe make some mistakes to try to generate more offense. And if Slavin isn't going to be able to get back the way that we expect him to, then that does change how you have to approach him. You have to view him as exclusively a shutdown defenseman. Whereas, like, I know his offensive stats aren't great, but I mean, it feels like it's a couple times a season Slavin pulls off some play, usually from a sharp angle shot where he just paints the near side corner where you go, oh, okay, no, that's a skilled guy. He just has a mind for playing defense, and that's why he's gotten to this point. But he's still got a bit of offensive flair. Now,
his partner Chatfield, he's a problem too, a little bit too. It's not just Slavin.
A little bit. I think just because these guys, it's the top pair. They're facing the top guys. I do think we're seeing a bit of the dog days of the season thing kind of creeping with this team a little bit. Hopefully, once we get down to kind of the home, like the actual home stretch, I'm talking like 5-6 games left in the season, you'll see them maybe start clicking a little bit. But right now, I think there's probably just a little bit of the human element of like, how much does this really matter? And when you let that creep in a little bit against a team that is playing for their lives, I think that's when you can start to see these things creep in a bit, especially with a team like Carolina that, you can never assume things. You can never assume that like last season's results actually have a direct line to what's going to happen this season. But
I would agree.
But we knew short of a collapse, this was at least a playoff team. Even if they got in with a wild card, this was a playoff team. And now that they're all but there, I think you're just seeing a little bit of that edge drop off.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because the thing is, when it comes to that edge, I think everybody's playing so good. It's like, why is it that usually when the other team score, I see the Slavin pair, and it's usually something that they should have done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing that I have.
Yeah, if there's one thing I would like to see this team do, and this is not a knock on Jalen Chatfield, I want Jalen Chatfield on this team. Jalen Chatfield as a third pair defenseman is, I think, elite. To just use his skating abilities and just use that lesser bit of ice time to be more creative. I've always been kind of hopeful that Chatfield would develop more of an offensive side to his game just because of that skating ability. It hasn't really worked out that way, but
no.
Maybe as Stankoven continues to look better and better at that center spot, man, maybe the biggest priority this offseason does need to be getting another elite right shot D-man to play next to Slavin, because I think it looks like Ghost, assuming I think this is his last year of his contract. That's going to be interesting.
Next year is his last year, not this
Next year is his last. Okay. Yeah. I think he and Nikishin have a great chemistry, and that's a guy I would love for Nikishin to be able to learn from. Miller, Walker, love it. I don't think Chatfield's a top pair guy. I just don't, and that's not an insult.
Yeah, I listen. I agree just from his performance lately, but I think he's great. On any other pair, whether it's top 4, top 6, whatever, he's superb.
Can I give you a stat about Nikishin that I think will paint his game against Toronto?
Sure.
So he has the overtime game-winning goal.
What a snipe that was.
And he had 4 shots on net that game. So I love that he has a willingness to shoot the puck. 3 turnovers, no blocks, no hits, at least according to the box score. So those are the 2 things. That's why Nikishin's on the third pair. I think Nikishin has become a bit of the golden child for the fan base, and this is not to go against Nikishin. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite players on this team, but defensively and the consistency in which he plays with the physicality that we know he can do, because he's thrown maybe some of the biggest hits of the season.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a learning curve, man. That's all it is. But we need to be honest with ourselves about where he's at right here, right now.
Defense and skating; those are the 2 things he needs to work on. Mm-hmm. But let's get obviously we already talked about the Nikishin goal. What a great snipe that was. But the other goal, I mean, you look at all these goals, they were unique in their own ways, weren't they, Andrew? Like you had Stahl scoring from Jarvis and Aho. That was, I believe, a power play goal. But I think it was Stahl who kind of tipped the puck. And then you have Robinson. What, a penalty shot? A penalty shot given in our favor, Andrew. And Robinson scores, man. Robinson, he's becoming one of my favorites, and you have Miller scoring on a shorthanded goal. So just wow, unique situations,
Yeah, and to respond to those in order, this is gonna keep being the response until saying it out loud and writing it down doesn't feel crazy to me. Power play merchant Jordan Stahl strikes again.
Yep,
Uh, Eric Robinson, I'm not surprised that he scored that. I think if you look at his goals this year, he has a really good percentage on
he
these
does.
breakaway chances. Like this is going to sound crazy, but if there's a loose puck going up the middle and there's Aho and Robinson going after it, Aho, you chase down the rebound. I don't want to see you, throw it right into the goalie's pads trying to go 5-hole again. But that fourth line in general, man, like so consistent. It's just such great energy drivers. And then Keandre Miller, we see it every year when they bring in a new defenseman, highs and lows. But I think that play really shows why they paid what they did for him.
Yep.
The athleticism is off the charts, and he's got a skill set that I think as he continues to get more and more comfortable with, which by the way, might not be until next season. And we've seen that happen with this team. That is what it is. That's why they didn't go out and get a guy for a year. They got a young, talented, super athletic defenseman that can grow into his role here. And I think you saw what they see in him on that play.
Oh, definitely. That was such a great play by Miller. And Nikishin ends it in overtime. So let's go to the Pittsburgh game real quick, Andrew. Until we're kind of over the usual time we usually like to set these episodes at, but that's fine. Um, this was to me the game where I thought Carolina almost played a pretty perfect game. The thing is, it could have been 7 or 8 to nothing Carolina with all the chances they had, Andrew.
Yeah, they missed on a few. Again, the stat that we all assume, I think every fan of every team, whether they're in the first place of this or the last place of this, we all assume that our team has hit the most post and bars, but to find out that no, it is actually the Hurricanes, and on this game in particular, just made too much sense. Because unlike the last Pittsburgh game where I thought that Stuart Skinner really kind of kept them in it, in this one, I feel like the Canes were kind of dominant. They just couldn't bury all of their chances, but they created so many that didn't matter. And you love
Yep.
seeing them cash in on the power play opportunities. Even the one that didn't. Well, there were two that didn't score. The last one was so late in the game that they were just kind of in autopilot mode. But that fourth one that didn't score still generated momentum. So I really don't have a whole lot of complaints from this Pittsburgh game. And
It was their power play that made the difference.
1,000% their power play. And I mean, Freddie looked solid.
He
Absolutely
did. I
solid.
loved Freddie. I mean, there's that one goal, that Trinikov goal. I mean, yeah, he probably could have challenged a little bit more there by being at the top of his crease, but regardless, he played a great game. And just to go through the goals here, Andrew, real quick, Aho, great goal on the power play. Ehlers, great slapper on the power play too. Chatfield, he gets a goal. I thought it was tipped by, I think, Jankowski maybe,
Yeah,
but
Jankowski and Carey both were doing the screen, which I mean, you love to see that.
yeah, I love seeing that. Then Seth Jarvis, to me, that was the best play, was the Jarvis goal, because Ehlers just made a great pass between the Penguins player's legs to Jarvis. He roofs it, and I'm kind of happy for Jarvis that he scored there, Andrew, just because it has been a little bit of a while since he hasn't scored a goal.
Yeah, he's been generating a ton of chances, but kind of like with that line and in general, just if they can find a way to convert at a slightly higher clip than they've been
Yep.
doing lately, that top line is one of the best in the league. And say what you will about Crosby and his age, and really the Penguins and in general and their age. This was a big game for them to kind of send a message, even if just to themselves, that they are one of the top teams in this division, no matter what the standings say. And I think the Canes kind of looked at them and said that's cute. No, you're not.
I know. I was really impressed. Defensively, they were just so good. It was so much better than we've seen probably pre-Olympic schedule, probably, because I think defensively they've been a little bit loose, but this game they really shut it down. They showed how good they are defensively, Andrew.
For sure. And you don't want them to develop bad habits. But again, going back to it sounds like an excuse. I think just when you look at just kind of the assumed nature of making the playoffs and just the point of the season that there is. Playing defense in any sport, whether it's hockey, basketball, soccer, whatever, it's almost all about intensity and
Mhm.
individual commitment to sacrifice yourself for the system. It's not flashy like offense or scoring goals. A lot of times it's doing things that quite frankly don't feel very good to help your team win. So I think when you get to a point where you're maybe having to really weigh the pros and cons of, say, blocking a shot compared to not taking a puck off your skate kind of thing, because we've seen it in the past with this team where just a really kind of a not that important game, not that important of a play, and something goes wrong. I mean, like, you look back to, the not defense, but just in terms of what might be going through their head. Think about what happened to Jesper Fast a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Last
Mhm.
game of the season doesn't matter, career ending. And, maybe Fast isn't a guy who makes a huge difference in the playoffs, but he's had such clutch performances that there's no doubt that hurt their chances that year.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I hated that was the last game at Columbus, but obviously after several at the empty nets, too many attempts, I should say. Jankowski, of all players, not Svetch, not Ehlers, not Stahl, Jankowski, he scores on the empty net and with the assist to Jackson Blake and Stankoven. And again, like to me, the most important thing obviously is getting the win at the end of the day and getting the goals to get you the win. But it is frustrating that they can't hit the empty net. It is, man.
Yeah, it's weird that that's something that we have to bring up so much. Even the last empty net goal that we scored, we had to point out how easy Stankoven made it look. But just a solid performance. Obviously the power play speaks for itself. The only one goal against speaks for itself. What I loved tonight, and actually it's why I'm glad that the second line guys got the assists on that empty net goal. Is it was all four lines were
They were.
contributing, even though it was the power play that scored. That's what's gonna allow Carolina to go on a run. It's not going to be the McKinnon Natchez line lighting things up or anything like that. It's going to be you have four lines that all play the same way and just come at you like a swarm of bees, and it's going to wear a team down over 7 games. Now it's not the same, run the deeds till they can't play in game 7 Paul Marie style of hockey, but it's
Yeah.
in that same kind of thought process of wearing them down just by being in better shape, more aggressive, and just relentless on the forward check, making their life miserable.
Yep, definitely. Well, Hurricanes win. They won it single handedly in a landslide against Pittsburgh. And now we just have, I believe, one game to recap in terms of Monday to Friday this week, uh, which is very interesting. I will admit.
Yeah, but I'll take all of the breaks in the schedule
I
these
will
guys
too.
can get, just because this last month is going to be a grind, man. It's going to be an
Oh, it
absolute
def-
grind, and hopefully Rod's
Yep.
smart with how he manages these with these players.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I think listen. He'll manage these players as good as he can. I might still have my questions, but overall, he's a great coach. So we will see you guys next time.